Today we're sewing the Happy Trails travel bag. This one here is made in a laminated cotton by Splash Fabric. We have a Velcro closure here and the ribbon hangs off so it's easy to grab. When you open it up, there is a hook. There's two options here and we have it tethered with the elastic so that it stays out of the way and it's not flopping around when you're not using the bag. And then when you have it hung up, you have two pockets up here, one behind the other. And then we also have a split pocket here. So there's one zipper, but we're going to sew down the center and we'll have two sections. Moving down to the lower part of the bag here, we have this large pouch, and inside the large pouch are elasticized pockets divided in three. You can divide them however you like. We have a little clear pocket on top. And we have this removable pouch, just so you can put some of the wetter things in here and kind of carry it with you wherever you go. All right, let's get sewing. We're going to sew the bag in groups. So we have our notions and our fabric pieces grouped together in sections. So our first section is going to be the outer bag, and we have two ribbon pieces, a hook piece, and a loop piece or Velcro. We have the outer bag piece, the handle, and this decorative piece and some binding. Now, a bit about my fabrics here. I'm using a waxed canvas for the main fabric. I'm going to make my handle today so that you can see how to do that, but you can also use webbing or a ribbon or something like that. I'm also going to make the ribbon for my hook and loop closure here, and I did that just by cutting the fabric twice as wide as my Velcro, and then I ironed it toward itself so it's nice and flat, nothing's overlapping, and all those raw edges will get enclosed there. Now the outer decorative piece is optional, however it does hold down the hook piece here. If you don't want to use this decorative piece, you can skip it, and then we'll just tack this down in the middle just like this. I'll show you how later. And you also have the option to make this decorative pocket into a zippered pocket if you add another zipper and some binding across the top. I'll talk to you about that too. All right, let's get sewing. I'm going to use one thread color throughout, so you're going to be able to see my bobbin thread on my hook and loop just so you can see it. But if you want your thread to match your hook or loop, you might want to change that, and this will be the only time we have to change our thread. All right, so we're going to take our ribbon or whatever you're using for your ribbon, and we're going to put this wrong side to right side. We're going to put this is the right side of my hook, and we're going to place it right on the top of the end here. And so we're using the two longer pieces, the longer ribbon and the longer piece of hook loop. And we're just going to stitch this, overlapping it about 1/4 inch or 6.3 millimeters. And we're going to stitch it down. And we'll repeat for our other one here. And it's really hard to get your thread to not look wiggly or sit on top of the hook pieces, just so you know. That's kind of just standard with this. All right, so now we have our two pieces, and now you're just going to fold it and line up the raw edges for the loop piece. And we're going to sew around the perimeter here. All right, it's going to look just like this. And now for this one here, we're going to do the same thing, and a little bit of your ribbon is going to hang off the end here. And this is just so you have something to grab when you're trying to open up the tab. All right, there we go. We have our two hook and loop tabs. There we go. I'm going to show you an option if you plan on skipping the outer bag decoration and you need to still be able to attach the closure strap to the outer bag. The first thing you need to do is shorten your hook fastener piece by 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. And we're going to overlap these so that we have the wrong side of the hook side of the fastener toward the right side of the ribbon here, just like this. We're going to lay it and overlap the end 1/4 inch. And we're going to sew across the end. So once you have it sewn to the end of the ribbon, we're going to fold it, and we still want to leave about like 1/4 inch, something that's not with the hook exposed here, so that when you're trying to lift it, you have something to grab and it's not like stuck to the other side, right? So we're going to let that hang off, and we're going to let a little bit of our ribbon hang off because remember this has been shortened, right? We're going to sew around the perimeter here. I'm just going to go down the long sides and across the bottom here. Because when I turn this under to the bag, we're going to be able to catch that other edge of the hook there. So now we're going to fold this and attach it to the outer front. Now we're going to fold this back here. And this is a particularly thready ribbon, so I need to be kind of careful. And we want to make sure we're enclosing that little edge there. And we're going to line this up on our outer bag. Now you have the notches here at each side, right here and here. That is where that outer bag decoration would go. So we're going to use these notches here as a guide to about the same level that we want to put this, because normally this would get slipped under that edge there. And you can see this is wax cotton, so I was able to just draw right on there with my hero marker lined up to that. And we're going to line this up. I'm just going to center it over there. It's okay if you're up or down a tiny bit. But this is about 1.5 inches from this edge here and then centered left to right. And then we're going to secure this. Make sure we don't include the other side here. And make sure it's nice and straight. And I'm going to do 2 rows of stitching. I'm going to try and enclose that little cut ribbon edge that I turn under, especially since this ribbon frays a lot. And I'm also catching a little bit of the hook fastener just to really make it nice and stable. Just like that. We'll trim our threads. If you're making your handle, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half, press, open it up, and then press it towards that center fold. And then fold it along that first fold again. And then we're going to stitch along both long sides. I'm going to start at the same end that I did this side so that I don't get any torquing. The reason we do this instead of sewing it right sides together and turning it right side out is that that can be a little tricky on some of the heavier fabrics. It wouldn't be possible on this wax canvas, but it also will create an uneven thickness. This way we have a really nice flat piece, just like a piece of webbing. All right, so we're going to place our handle on our bag. You can do this a couple ways. You can do your first one where you turn it and do it right sides together over that drill hole there. And we can sew it at 1/4 inch, or we can turn it back and do it all at once, just like this. So if we were to do it this way and to kind of get it into position so it's a little easier to manage, I'm going to center the strap over the drill hole, like that, and then I would turn it, fold it along that seam, and I sort of push it back against the seam a little so I'm not straining on it. And then now I'm going to stitch and enclose that raw edge. This will be less thickness if you're a little worried about some of the fabrics that are out there. And on this side, it's a little trickier to do that. You're going to pull it back. It's like this. I'm going to center that strap on there and do the exact same thing. And I'd be pretty forceful. Hold it, pull it back, and then stitch it in place. Now I'm going to show you the other way to do this. Turn it under, center it over the drill hole. You're going to be doing double thickness with this, so there's advantages to each one. And we want to make sure that it's directly across from it. You can always roll up your fabric if it's really stiff to go under the machine head. And I'm going to go just off the end and enclose that raw edge. I'm going to get any threads out of there now. And I'm going to trim this to get it out of the way. And I'm always trying to make sure I'm keeping it perpendicular to this long edge here. We'll enclose that and meet it back at the beginning. Just like that. So you have your 2 different ways to sew that handle. All right, we're gonna finish this edge here. I'm gonna sew this first to the wrong side. I'm gonna use my seam allowance and keep a nice even seam. I'm gonna press it, give it a nice little tug here, And we're going to turn it to the right side, turn it under just so it passes that stitching line there, and then we'll edge stitch. No one's ever going to see the other side, so this is all we care about, looking nice. That's why it's pretty easy to do the binding for these pockets and edges, because we don't have to worry about both sides. You just have to worry about this one. It's just 2 long straight seams. And now we'll repeat for the other side. You can make those steps a little bit easier if you can iron your fabric and press those seams, but I'm trying to demonstrate this just in case you're using waxed canvas or something like that that you don't want to iron. You can also pin it and clip it as well. All right, we can trim these little ends here. Okay, we're going to take our hook piece, which is the longer one with the little ribbon tab hanging off, and we're going to center it on our bag decoration here. There is a notch, but you're going to lose it when you do the binding. What we can do is tack this to here using this existing stitching here, and then when we go to edge stitch down, the entire thing will go across the bottom here. But this will just help us keep it in place. Like that. And now we can line this up on our outer bag between the notches. And now we can edge stitch on the outer edge of our binding down to the bag. Make sure this doesn't wiggle. And we can repeat for this side here. And now we have our outer bag ready for the next steps. Let's say you want to make this decorative piece a pocket, or you would like to add a pocket to the back. Here I have cut this same pattern piece in this fabric, and I bound the top and the bottom. You can even make this in vinyl as well. You can put this one on the back, and I'm going to use a pre-made zipper here. This one's a little too long. I'm just going to line up the zipper just behind the binding. I just need enough space for my foot to be able to edge stitch this down, since I'm not using a zipper foot, but you can use a zipper foot. And I also need space for the head of the zipper to be able to slide past. So we're just going to edge stitch this down. I can move my head out of the way, sew for a bit, and then I slide it past. And I usually just nestle my foot right next to the zipper teeth. Now for these pre-made zippers, the zipper tape's narrower than, say, like a continuous zipper. And since it's too long, I'm just going to cut it just like this. If you're using something like this coiled chain rather than the big plastic teeth or a metal zipper, you're going to easily be able to sew right through the coiled chain on the ends. And then just because I really like the clean look, I'm going to bind the top edge of my zipper, but you don't have to. You could just top stitch it down. So I'll show you what this looks like, and I'm going to do it again. I always do it right side to the wrong side first. I won't quite get my 1/4 inch seam allowance on this narrower tape. I'm going to move my head out of the way. And same thing, we'll fold it to the front. Fold it just past that stitch line and edge stitch it, leaving enough space for my foot to pass by. The zipper foot for this machine isn't that great, so I tend to not use it. There we go, and now we can place this on the back of the pouch here. Now if you wanted to save yourself a little bit of binding, you could line this up at the very bottom, not bind this edge, round the corners to match the shape here, and that would be fine. But since I've done the binding, I'll just lift it up a little bit and we'll edge stitch it in place. And I'm going to make sure that I get it parallel to the edge here. I'm placing mine about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. And we'll just edge stitch this binding down. Now I could just travel right up the side here. And then I'm going to move my zipper head out of the way, but I'm going to hold these ends together. I'm going to roll up my bag, go across the top. And you can go down the side or not. It's probably pretty secure with it or without it. There we go. And we can trim this flush. And now we have an extra pocket on the back. All right, we're to the inner bag now, which is kind of the bulk of the construction, and we're going to do lots of pockets and some binding. So we have the hanging hook and the little piece of elastic, and I'm going to show you an alternate way to make a strap instead of using the hook, and I'm also going to show you how to make the tether to hold the hook using the enclosed pattern piece, but you can also use binding if you wanted to sew that. We have 3 zippers, and I'm using continuous zipper here, so I've cut it to fit the length of my vinyl pockets here. I will cut the zipper to match the length of my pockets here. There's a slider on each one. We have 3 vinyl pieces. We have the split pocket, the top vinyl pocket, and the bottom vinyl pocket. And I can tell the difference because they ascend in height as they go up the bag. We have this optional piece of decorative fabric, which is back here, like this. We have the elastic pocket and the elastic, and we have the inner bag. All right, lots of fun stuff. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our top vinyl pocket. So it's the middle of the 3 heights, and it has the notch at the bottom, and we're gonna secure our small piece of elastic. This is only if you're using the metal hook and you need the tether to hold that metal hook in the travel bag when it's not in use. So we're just gonna attack this here because it's really easy to forget. Next, we're going to bind our vinyl pieces. We're going to bind the top edge of the top vinyl pocket, which is the one with the elastic, and both long edges of the split pocket. If your vinyl has a wrong side, I always start with the binding on facing the right side of the binding to the wrong side of the vinyl. And the wrong side could mean like there's a texture or it's shinier. We're going to do the top edge of this top vinyl pocket, so not the edge with the elastic. All right, just like this. Because I'm using continuous zipper, I trimmed 1/4 inch off of the top of my vinyl. And this is just because zipper tape for continuous zipper is wider. So if you're using a zipper tape that's wider than 1 inch, you need to trim whatever that amount is over the 1 inch off of the vinyl so that the pocket heights still work. Now we're going to attach our zippers, and we're just going to line up the zipper so that it's just underneath that binding. We don't want to see the zipper through the window here. We just want it to line up with that binding the best we can. And like I always say, I always try and leave space for my machine foot to get by here. And then I'll know I also have space for the zipper head as well. We'll just edge stitch the binding, lining it up. And I just run my foot along the zipper coil. I'm gonna have to move my head or the slider. And just like this, and this will be the right side of my pocket, and this is the wrong side. Zipper tape doesn't fray, so it doesn't need to be enclosed. And we'll repeat for the top pocket. There we go. We have our top pocket and our split pocket. All right, so now we're going to add our bottom pocket of the layered pockets, and this is the tallest one. We're going to set our split pocket aside, and we're going to take this one and line it up behind, and we're going to line it up to the top of the zipper here, and we're going to bind these 2 edges together just at the top. Oh, there we go. Trim these flush. And now we're going to add a zipper behind this. And I'm making sure my sliders are pointing the same way. We'll just lay it under there and edge stitch it on. Just like that. Now we're going to add that bottom layer of fabric behind all of this, and make sure you get anything out behind your vinyl now because it'll be harder later. We're going to line it up at the bottom here, and we're going to bind these 3 layers together. So we have our 2 pockets and our bottom layer of fabric. This time we're enclosing that elastic bit. There we go. So all these layered pockets are now done, and it's looking like this. So you should have a separate pocket from this one back here. And this piece was optional, it's just a decoration. So if you didn't want to add it, all you needed to do was bind the bottom, these two together. And when the pocket is placed on top of the inner bag, if this wasn't here, you would have your back layer to create the pocket. All right, so here we're gonna bring in our inner bag and we're gonna line everything up now. So we're gonna clip these pockets here to our bag. I'm gonna try and keep everything nice and straight here and lined up. Split pocket underneath this layer. And we'll also clip it in place. And we're making sure everything looks pretty straight. And if you would like to add a label, now is a good time. So now we're going to edge stitch our layered pockets through the zipper of the split pocket all the way through to the inner bag bottom. If you need to move zipper heads out of the way, you should. Here we go. And so now that will form your back pocket if you were missing this fabric here. And now we're going to secure our split pocket down to the inner bag. Remove our clips. And now we're going to add our division of our split pocket. So you can put this wherever you like. I'm going to put it in the middle. I like to sew this from the bottom up. I'm going to back stitch inside the binding and then go straight up. You shouldn't have too much trouble going through this small of amount of vinyl with the vinyl coming in contact with your presser foot, but if it's giving you a lot of trouble because some vinyls are really tacky, you could put a piece of Scotch tape there or a piece of tissue paper on top of your vinyl. This is the only time we're going to come in contact with the vinyl. All right, so there we go. We have the whole upper portion here. So now let's secure our pockets here. I'm going to round the corners at the top here. So basically we just need to secure things up here, and I'm just going to just sew around a little bit in the corners, just secure things. And then I'm gonna turn it over and look at the back here and trim things to match the best I can. If you're using continuous zipper, you are going through a tiny bit of the coil chain. All right, working on our elastic pocket now, and you have a 3/4 inch hem allowance at the top of your pocket for a casing for elastic. So you can do this one of two ways. You can finish the edge with a zigzag or overlock or something similar, press it 3/4 inch down, and then stitch inside the serging or the finish so that you have room for your elastic. You can also fold it under. I'd fold it under no more than 1/4 inch, and that will leave you a 1/2 inch wide casing for your elastic, as long as your elastic will fit in that casing. So you can choose the one that you like the best, and we'll stitch it down. Just like this. And then I've left my elastic uncut. I have a longer piece than the 10 inches that's allotted. And that gives me something to hold on to at each end. So if you've cut yours, that's okay. You'll just need to be careful and clip it or pin it to the end so it doesn't pull through. You can use a safety pin to feed the elastic through, or something like this loop turner. And I usually pull it through, and I have it pinned at the 10-inch mark because I wanted to show you that sometimes that amount will be a little bit more or less than what you need. It's usually going to be a little more than what you need. So I'm going to pull this through here, and I'm going to pull it all the way to the end. I leave a little extra, and now I hold it tighter with my hand. I let it slip in, and then I'm going to sew across the end here. like that. And now I feel really secure in giving it a good tug. So now I can use my inner bag to figure out how long my elastic needs to be. We need it to draw up the top of the bag so that it's the same width as the inner bag here, right, like this. So if I need to pull my elastic a little bit more, in heavier fabrics, you're going to need a shorter piece of elastic because it's harder to draw up that heavier fabric. You don't want it too short because you don't want it to pull the bag in like this. So we're just looking for something that is the same width as our bag. So that's more important than the actual measurement. So then once I figure it out, I sew across the end and trim. So now I give it a few good tugs to evenly distribute those gathers. And we're going to add a gathering stitch along the bottom edge here. So I've lengthened my stitch for a gathering stitch. I'm going to go about where that notch is on the corner, the rounded corner. And we're staying inside the seam allowance. And now we're going to draw this up. And we're going for the same thing. We want something that's the width of our bag. I'm going to switch to this side. And we'll check our width here. It'll feel a little bit awkward, but we're going to make it a lot easier to deal with in just a second. So I line up those corners and sort of relax it. And we also have notches along the bottom that we're trying to line up. So if you want to start looking for those and going, okay, well, this notch needs to go here, and we can clip that. And then find your other notch. There's also a center notch, so you can use that as well. And then we have our drill holes up higher here. And I've actually made physical holes in mine. You can see right here, right there. I've also pieced together this backing because I didn't have quite enough, just so you know that seam isn't supposed to be there. And so what I can do is turn this upside down. I'm going to fold this so it stays out of the way. Give this a few good tugs, and then I'm going to line it up the corners here. There's a notch on the side here that it should match like this. And then we're going to repeat on this side here. And now we can kind of look and see, is everything looking pretty evenly distributed? Now, if you know you're going to have you just want 2 compartments, you can do that. Or if you're only going to be putting larger things in here, you can bias some of the gathers to one pocket or another. These are divided in thirds equally right now. All right, so we're going to go straight up here, up to that drill hole. And I sit here and I will make sure that I'm looking straight at that spot so that I know that I'm going to nail it. But in my experience with doing divisions like this is they really aren't a big deal if they're a little bit wobbly or a little bit crooked. You won't notice it and they'll still be very functional. I'm going to give it a few back tacks there to secure it, and we'll repeat with this one here. Get my gathers a little more evenly distributed there. We got our notch. And now I'm looking at my drill hole here, keeping the top flat. There we go. And then if you want to secure the perimeter to keep this nice and fuss-free, I think that's a good thing to do right now. Just keep your stitching inside the seam allowance. You can spend some time sort of evenly distributing these gathers. There we go. Now we have our divided pockets. Looking very cute. So for the metal hook option, I'm just using retired pattern hooks from the garment industry. So what I usually do is take a piece of bias, and this is 10 inches long, just like the pattern piece for the strap is, and this is just the pre-cut bias. And I sew it right sides together. You can iron it in the way that I have you iron for all the other straps, but it's so narrow that it can be a little bit fiddly and easy to burn your fingers. So I usually just sew it right sides together along the edge here, at like a 1/8 inch seam allowance, a pretty small seam allowance. Then I turn it right side out. Bias is pretty easy since it's pretty stretchy. And this is a quilting cotton weight fabric. I get this nice and flat, all the edges here. I'd give it a good press or just leave it like this. And then I will make a slip knot. And the way I do that is I fold it in half, I put it through the hole, open up that loop, and then I slip the ends through and give it a good tug, just like that. And that's about the right weight of fabric and width, so you can be able to tie this in a knot. It's just somehow you need to be able to secure this to the hook really easily, and you don't want something too bulky because it'll be kind of annoying. All right, and then for this, I then will loop it through the elastic, and I pull it pretty firmly to the top. I'm not stretching the elastic, but I want it pretty firm. And then I match it up to the center notch here, and I'll stitch it down. You obviously don't need all of this fabric, but it does make it a little easier to tie a knot depending on what kind of knot you're going to use when you have a little extra here. And then we can just trim this flush, just like that. Now, if you're doing the hanging strap, you're going to fold it along the length, and then fold it toward the center on both sides. And then we're going to edge stitch this. You can press this. And we're going to edge stitch along both folds. This will get it nice and flat, and then we'll have nice even thickness. And this is an option for this strap here. It just depends on what fabric you're using and how thick it is. This one's a little wider than that. And then I would fold this in half and tack this here where the hook is. And the other option is if you wanted to make 2 of these, you can put maybe a hook and loop or Velcro on each end so that you can separate it and wrap it around whatever you're trying to fasten this to or hang it from. Or you can put a snap, a heavy-duty snap on the end. You could get a buckle and put 2 ends with a buckle on each one. There's a lot of things you can try utilizing whatever kind of notions you already have on hand. And just make sure that it's flexible, like you can use it for different types of things to hang your bag up with. All right, so now our inner bag is completely prepped to become a Happy Trails bag. Our next group is the large pouch. So we have our top pocket, which is in the vinyl. We have a zipper, and we have this optional decorative piece that goes behind the pocket here. We have the large pouch itself, and I have it in main fabric and in the contrast fabric, or more like a lining here. So we're gonna set these aside, and we're gonna start with our pocket. We're gonna bind the top edge of our vinyl. And now we're going to slip our zipper behind this, and if you want your sliders pointing the same way, make sure you make a note of that. And we're going to lay it on just under that edge. Now we're going to line it up with our little decorative piece here. Some clips in place, and you can see I didn't trim my zipper first, so now I can trim it flush. Fabric really wants to wiggle on this vinyl, so make sure you manage it. When I'm going around something like this where there's corners, I kind of gently pull the bias as I'm sewing it on, kind of stretch it a tiny bit. That way when I flip it to the right side, it wants to hug the edge. So now I'm going to go back here and make sure that everything is 1/4 of an inch or the same seam allowance width. I'm looking for something even. We don't want to trim it down. We just want to trim it even. That's more important. We want something to fill up the binding so that we have a nice crisp binding edge. And I always find those curves need a little bit of trimming. So now we'll turn it to the right side. I'm pretty firm. And now we can turn it under, put that fold edge just past the stitch line. And remember, nobody's going to see the other side, so don't worry about it. I like to use my awl to hold things in place. And I'm pretty firm. You can see I sort of pick up the corner and I turn under this edge here, kind of push it really firmly like this toward that corner, and I push it down and stretch it over. I put it exactly where I want it to be. It'll make it a little easier. All right, and then when I'm around these curves, I'll often have to pick up my presser foot a lot and adjust as I go. There we go. We have a little pocket. Now we can attach this to the pouch. And we should have some notches here at the top that we can line it up to. Just center it there. We'll clip it in place. And we'll just edge stitch the perimeter. There we go. We're going to sew our corners of our pouch and form the shape of the pouch. So these are symmetrical, so you just need to fold them and line them up and sew a 1/4 inch seam. And you'll just go all the way to the end to the fold, backstitch, and then repeat with your other one. No need to finish these edges either. So now you can either clip this fold and then press the seam open, but I like to just offset the thicknesses from the inner pouch to the outer pouch. So now we're just going to flip this right side out. And now we're going to repeat this with our other piece here in contrast. And this one will press our seams the opposite way. So let's say we press the outer pouch to the outer edge, and then we don't need to turn this pouch right side out because it's going to nestle in here, and we'll put these seam allowances towards the center. And then I like to stitch across this corner here to keep all that in place. Mash down your bag, it's okay. Be really firm with it, you're the boss. All right, and then we'll line this one up here. There we go. And then we'll just line up all of our other edges here. The lining is pretty much there to make it prettier on the inside, but also just in case you're not using a fabric with a lot of body, it's going to add a little bit more. And now we're going to line up this top edge, and you guessed it, we're going to bind it together. You're on the home stretch of all the binding. Not much left. All right, like I always do, I start from the back, right sides to the inside. And remember, you're catching zipper and the under pocket, and we might have to move the zipper head out of the way. And we're going to fold this to the right side, turn it under, and edge stitch it down. There we go, looking really cute. I like this. There's our pouch. Now we're going to attach our large pouch to the inner bag, and we're going to complete the whole inner bag assembly. So we're going to line up our corners to those little notches in the curved corners here. And it'll be a little bit fussy. So sometimes what I do with these like squared bags like this is I'll push them like this and even just kind of mash them so that this perimeter right here, the pouch part, is sort of pushed to the inside there. And it just kind of gets it out of the way, depending on how stiff your fabric is. All right, so we'll clip this. We have notches up here. The taller notches go to the top of this pouch. And I think the big thing to worry about here is making sure your pouch is directly across from side to side here. And you can kind of measure down from your split pocket to kind of see, did I get it the same amount? So we'll put a clip here, and last one right up here at the top. And we're going to look and make sure that we're directly across. And then we're just going to tack it in place. just to get it to be less fussy. Make sure you have all the layers together. You don't want to miss any of your large pouch lining. And remember, just be firm with this. Push it out of the way. If you don't want to get all the texture of like that you get with the waxed canvas right away, you can always put some heat to it and it'll go right away at the end if you want it to look real pretty for the photo. Now see, I'm pulling the bag and lining up all these edges down there. And I sort of push it to kind of get it to the edge of the curve, because the curve it's going to pull away a little bit more. I'm going to grab this, get these edges lined up. Pretty firm with it. Here we are, home stretch. There we go. And this all flush. And now our last step is to get this whole assembly ready is to put our other loose hook and loop tab, the loop tab. We're going to place this, and we want the loop to be up. And we're going to center it on that notch down there, just like this. And we're going to stitch it in the seam allowance. Baste it on. There we go. There we go. We have our pouch looking good. All we have to do, one more step. All right, so we're going to arrange our bag here. So here we have the inside of our inner bag, and here's our outer bag, right? But we want to flip this over so that the decorative part is at the top, upside down like this. And then you're going to set your bag on top, and then try it out. Make sure you got it right? So you want your fasteners to be at the opposite sides. You want this all to be wrong sides together, and get rid of any of these little threads because sometimes they can show through depending on what you are using. And then you're going to line up all of your edges, and we can baste it in place. You might want to pin this out of the way so you don't accidentally catch it. You have center notches to keep things lined up so they don't get skewed. And now we can just tack this all together. My handle's pushing up, so I'm going to just push it down and kind of get it to behave a little bit better. I'm going to slide this. Get your zipper sliders out of the way if you need to. I have that back pocket, so I felt that little zipper slider at the end. And again, I'm trying to keep the center notch here lined up and my corner notches stacked one on top of the other. We don't want anything going like this, right? You can see I'm mashing the bag. I'm really managing it. I'm the boss here. Now push this bag out of the way like that again. All right, and then up here, same thing. You want to make sure that this is staying centered. We're not getting anything askew. You might feel like, especially right here, it feels kind of slack and like you have to ease it a little bit because everything else is really stiff and sort of inflexible at this point. So I just sort of walk my foot over it. So I guess this is our other point where we're going to touch the vinyl with our foot. If you have a lot of trouble with that, what you can do is stitch most of it together and then flip it over and put this towards your feed dogs. It'll be a lot easier. It won't get hung up on your presser foot. Okay, I'm going to move my hook out of the way. I'm also going to make sure that I don't get this askewed at all. Just making sure I get through all the layers too. It'll feel a little fussy right now, but it's not too bad. Once we get it all secured, it'll feel a lot better. There we go. Now you can kind of check out what your bag is looking like here. And we can do our binding, but we're going to trim up this edge a little bit. Not too much because we're probably going to do another pass once we have our binding on there. But like I can see a little bit hanging out here. I'm going to trim that down a little bit. I only have a 1/4 inch seam, so while I can enclose a lot of this and hide it, I can't fit all of it in there. And like I said, we'll trim again once we have our binding on there. Looking at both sides and making sure. Okay, now I'm kind of looking it over, making sure that everything is how I want it. Make sure there's nothing getting immortalized in your vinyl. Everything looks pretty, like the corners look like the kind of rounded edge you want, and it's not looking like this, okay? So now we're gonna start our binding from the inside bag here, and I always fold it back like 3/4 of an inch, something like that. And then I like to put it here where it's thinner. You could put it anywhere. You can line it up to the edge of zipper, but I think like because we're going to go back over this with another layer of binding, keeping it in a place that's not as thick is going to be helpful later. So I just put it right here next to my label, and I'm just going to sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam, and we're going to try and make sure that we're enclosing everything around the perimeter now. Mine likes to get caught on the table here because of that zipper. So I'm always trying to manage this so it doesn't hang off or get caught on things, because it gets really dangerous when straps get hooked on the corner of your table and stuff like that. All right, and so now around these corners, I sort of walk the foot, and I'm very, very gently pulling, really just keeping tension on the binding. And see, I'm arranging this corner to flatten it out so I don't get any tucks. Keep this nice and perpendicular to the end here. Even though you've sewn it, it can still get a little bit, you know, wiggly. All right, now we're at this corner, so we're gonna pick this up and push it over. All right, we're approaching the end here. I'll flatten all this out. Make sure all my threads are towards the seam allowance. And then I'm just gonna lay this flat on top of that starting point and back stitch where it folds back. And then I'm just gonna trim this to match that fold back length like that. All right, and now we'll go around and we'll trim it if we need to, if it's not the same width all the way around, and get it so that it is. All right, so now we're gonna be really firm and we're gonna pull this really hard. Push your corners. We want as much of that binding on the other side. It's like this. Give it a good tug. All right, and so I'm gonna start just below here so it's a little easier to get going. It's our last step. So we're just going to turn it under until that fold just passes that stitch line. Now we just want to cover it all up. Don't worry too much about the landing on the other side. If you are folding this just past that stitch line that we just sewed, your needle is to the right of that stitch line, you're going to land on the binding. And if you don't, I promise you, it's not a big deal. Like, I fall off all the time. It looks fine. We're not making heirloom quilts here. All right, and I'm really firm. See, I fold it and then I pull and let it, look how it just rounds naturally around the corner. Got my awl, and we're just gonna go all the way around. We're gonna manage the bag so it doesn't get caught on things. Go slow over your zipper coil if you need to, but in my experience, if you have a stout needle, it'll be fine. All right, and so here we have the hook, we have the zipper pull, so I'm just gonna try and get rid of some of this stuff out of the way. And then now we'll pull the other way. That was the hanging hook and the Velcro hook. And when you're going through those really thick things, if you're a little nervous, use your hand wheel to turn it toward you as you sew, and you can sew one stitch at a time, just like this. It's a lot less stressful. See, you can hand stitch your whole project like this. Like here I have the coiled chain. I'm just going to really slowly go over that. Pull this bag out of the way. And pull the bag again. Keep pulling that pouch to reduce the bulk that's wanting to kind of creep down toward this seam here. Pull the pouch again. You can see I'm sort of pushing the binding toward, because it really wants to creep up really wide right here, but I don't want it to do that. So I push it back and I use my awl to take that fold and place it where I want it. Just takes a bit of practice. But I promise you really won't notice it if it's a little wider in some places. Mine will be too. You won't notice. All right, so now we're at the beginning here, and so I'll start arranging these folded edges. So I do this end first. I'll arrange it, and I sort of fold it a little narrower than what it needs to be. That way there's space for this one to wrap around it. And I'm pretty firm. I'll pull the top layer, and then I sort of fold it, and I'm kind of gentle when I fold it and wrap it around, because if I pull too hard, it'll want to not fit. It'll get a little bit torquey. So that way I sort of pull it really firm, and then I'm gentle when I wrap it around. Get rid of some of these threads, push them into the seam, pull the fold over to cover. There we go. Your threads. And you'll see that it's finished right here. There's a little fold edge there. You don't need to stitch it down, it's fine. And there we go. Here is our Happy Trails bag. Let's secure our hook here. That. This is very cute. And if I don't like these on the canvas, I can just hover my iron with some steam or use a hair dryer and it'll go right away. But it comes back, and it's kind of the beauty of this fabric. It's always much easier to sew than you think it will be too. All right, look at that. We have our elastic pockets. Very cute. Zipper pocket, handle. All right, here's our zippered little removable pouch. We have 2 of our main fabric and 2 of our lining, however you decide to configure it, and we have our zipper. I'm using continuous zipper. It's cut to the width. If you're using a prepared zipper, your zipper is probably going to stop inside the ends of the bag. All right, so our first step is we're going to take 1 of the outer and 1 of the lining. There's notches on the bottom of this pattern piece. You only need them on the inner fabric here. They're right here. It's okay if you did it on all 4 of them, but you just want to make sure that you don't sew this notched edge into the zipper edge. You want that to be the opposite. So we're going to put the zipper right side down to the main fabric, and we're going to put our lining right side down to the back side of the zipper. We're going to make a zipper sandwich and sew all layers together. If you have trouble with, if you're doing like two different thicknesses of fabric, especially this one is going to wiggle and it might stretch out and kind of end up longer than the other one, I will walk my foot like I lift it up a lot, but you can also reduce the pressure of your presser foot or flip the whole thing over and sew with this on the bottom, and that'll help a lot. Let's move our zipper pull here. I'm going to understitch the lining here like this. So I'm going to leave the zipper and the outer fabric that way, and we're just going to understitch the seam allowances to the lining. This isn't necessary, but it is kind of nice so that if your lining is really lightweight compared to your outer bag, it doesn't get sucked into the zipper. All right, so now we're going to repeat these 3 steps with this other side. So see how my seam allowance is really stiff? I'm going to just fold it down because of the canvas. You don't want to top stitch through all layers. It'll be a problem later on. So, all right, so let's find our unnotched edge, and we're going to line it up. And make sure at this point you're lining it up with the sides of the bag. And same with this here. Line up all 3 layers. And again, we're going to understitch just the lining to the seam allowance. All right, so now it's looking like this. You have your lining and your outer, and your zipper is clean finished on both sides. So now if you're using a continuous zipper, you're gonna wanna pop this open a little bit, just like that. And now we're gonna line up our lining to our lining and our main fabric to our main fabric. And we're gonna push the zipper toward the outer bag. This is always a really awkward little spot to do. If you're not doing continuous zipper, it's gonna be nice and slack here, not bulky with the coil chain. And the best you can, you wanna line up your lining seam, but it's really hard to get this whole thing to line up perfectly, and it's okay that it doesn't. It'll be all fine when we turn it right side. So we're gonna clip that, and we're gonna clip this one here. Again, push the zipper toward the main bag. See how I'm kind of bending it? All right, and so we're gonna start at our notched end here. So here's one notch. We're gonna go to the corner, down the long side, across the short end, and then back to this notch and stop there. And we're gonna turn the whole bag through this little hole. Again, if you get a little nervous about sewing through the coil chain, you can walk with your hand wheel, just like this. You can even kind of skip over that coil chain with your needle and just do one gigantic stitch right over it. Okay, remember to stop at the notch. And then you want to trim your corners, especially the outer bag. And now we're going to turn our bag, and now you'll know why you left that little hole with your zipper, because sometimes zippers won't let you. Okay, and so we'll flip these corners too. Even though they're not as crucial to the inside of the bag, it'll be easier to turn these edges in like this and edge stitch them. So I'll line up the seam here, kind of give it a good tug, and I fold in these little ends. You can iron it if you like. Okay, and now we're gonna just edge stitch this closed. No need to hand sew it since no one will ever see it. It'll be the bottom on the inside of the bag. And I usually have to find where the end is, so I put my awl on there as a guide. There we go, and now we can poke our bag in there. And I like to start looking at the end of my zipper here, and I'll put my finger in here and pull this up really firmly like this. This side will be less like that. And there is your removable bag. There we go, we have our removable bag. Looking good, nice job. Safe travels, and thanks for sewing a Happy Trails bag.